Well, good morning. Oh, we've got a pile of comments just come in. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the live stream today with myself and Jeffrey from Lytbox. As the kind of topic suggests, with the sort of thumbnail and everything else, we've been talking about sort of AI, the future of WordPress, and some of the things that are being predicted for where web design in general and websites is actually going. Right. Let me just get rid of that. Sorry about that. If you had a sort of a strange loop there, I just had YouTube in the background that decided they want to pop up as well. So if everybody could let me know if you can hear and see and everything sounds okay and looks okay, that would be fantastic. But Jeffrey, good to see you this evening for you, I think, isn't it? You're 7 hours ahead of me. So how are you?
Yeah, doing well. Doing well. Good to see you too. Good to connect. Thank you for having me on. Definitely looking forward to this conversation.
Hey, it's not it's going to be the first of many, I hope, because I think when we've been talking offline, we've got a lot of things, I think, in common with how we see things and how we sort of see the future and stuff like that. So today's conversation, for anybody that may just be jumping on kind of like out of the blue because you've seen the live stream pop up, we want to talk about AI, its impact, the future of web design, the future of websites in general, and some of the kind of things that are being sort of predicted with regards to that. Myself and Jeffrey had a couple of conversations, sort of like offline, as it were, and I think we've got some interesting sort of points to sort of talk about today. But I think let's start off with the very broad picture, and I'm sure we'll start to sort of hone things down a little bit. But as always, if you've got any comments or questions, please drop those in the comment section. If it's a question, if you could start it with hashtag Q, so I know it's a question, it'll make it a lot easier then for us to take a look and answer as many questions as we can. But I think the conversation and the topic we talked about the other day, which is probably broader than maybe some people are thinking, is predictions for there may not actually be websites in the way that we know it within the next, let's say, 2 years. I mean, you read that article and you sort of probably know a little bit more about it. So I'm going to hand it over to you to sort of, so you can kind of give the lowdown and let's have a sort of chat about what we think with regards to that side of things. So over to you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I got a lot of thoughts and stuff, but by the way, love the tombstone on the thumbnail. I thought that was pretty cool. Like right there.
Thank you,
And
AI.
this wasn't my thank you, AI. See? Didn't even have to hire a graphic designer. And this is, I guess, the whole point of everything. Now, this isn't from me. This is just what I heard. A friend of mine, we had a big conversation. He's like really big into AI. He's building out his company sites in Replit, where he used to actually hire us to build their websites. And, you know, he's really deep into the AI rabbit hole. And we had a conversation, and when I told him we're still building websites with WordPress, he looked at me surprised. He's like, "WordPress is still around?" Like that was that was genuinely how he felt. And then in that conversation, he mentioned that he was talking with somebody running an AI agency out this way, and that they told him in a year's time, websites will no longer be needed or maybe even existing. And yeah, that wasn't me, but I thought like that was I guess where the tombstone came from and where I guess a big overview of a lot of this. But what are your thoughts on that? Because my jaw hit the floor and I was ready to like kick over chairs. Like, what are you talking about? You know?
Look, since we talked about this, I've sort of thought about it a few times, and I think the thing that's kind of always overlooked when you see these predictions of the future of AI and other things is human nature. You know, we're in a tech industry. We're in kind of this web design bubble, this AI bubble. You know, maybe we're seeing things a little different to your typical person. So I don't see it disappearing in that way that quickly. Yes, in the future, absolutely, because technologies, the way we interact with things, are going to change. That's just nature of technology. But we always seem to overlook human nature, and people are not going to suddenly go, oh, the internet, I'm not going to bother with websites anymore. I'm going to use a completely different way of searching. Like AI, for example, you know, people like us that are used to the technology will pick up our phones and we'll go on to ChatGPT or Claude and things like that, and we'll ask it to do research for us. We'll ask it for questions. You know, we're starting to get ads and we can buy things via things like ChatGPT. But I still think that's going to take more than the next 2 years before people adopt that side of things. Think of your parents, think of your grandparents, think of people you know that are maybe a little bit older, maybe not so tech savvy. or in countries that don't have access to the same technologies that we do in the Western sort of world, where we're used to it, having, high speed sort of internet, having high spec phones, computers, laptops, all those kinds of things. I honestly think at some point it will change, but I don't think it's going to be this drastic kind of like websites will disappear in 2 years' time. I just don't see that happening. I just don't think it can happen that quickly. At some point, yes, probably. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, you've obviously given it some thought as well. What are your thoughts on how you see things changing?
Yeah, well, at first, when I hear predictions like that, or when I see these big changes or hear people talking about them, my first instinct is to fight against them. And I think that's the human nature side of things. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And it's something, though, too, like for web design specifically, I have been looking at these changes now since early last year because I've been seeing the writing on the wall that it's definitely evolving. Web designers are no longer going to get away doing the same thing that they were doing 3, 4 years ago, 3, 4 years in the future. Like, we have to evolve. And it's the reason why I'm deep in it is because I teach web design. I want to be able to teach and be in it with everyone because we're all in this state of uncertainty right now because we don't know what it's going to be like 3 or 4 years from now. But I also feel like just the human nature of things, I see it across even different industries. Anytime you mention like this change, like for an example, there was a brilliant video that just came out. It was a designer. She is like the lead designer, I believe, of Claude Code or of Cursor, one of those. I think it was Claude, but she also led the design for Fig Jam. She led the design for Dropbox, like really high credentials and achievements. And she was talking about the web design process as we knew it, as we know it, is no longer the norm. And I went to the comments, and just the temperature of it is that first human reaction, which is, we still need it. We still need it. We still need it. We can't change, that resist to change. And I think that the writing is on the wall, that things are changing and we're seeing it across the board. And, you and I even talk like, I was seeing it as far as like content, as far as like the numbers and as far as a lot of other things. And now when I'm looking in under other industries as well, it's the same: graphic design, motion design, even marketing and other areas. I think that this is generally across the board right now. We're seeing this change. And so, yeah, I know I'm kind of like going on, but to sum it up, when I heard that, or something outrageous like websites won't be around for a year, I feel the human nature to react against it, but then I got to step back and kind of do a thought experiment, like what would that look like? And then start to play that out. And yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. We've got to kind of consider how people are traditionally used to interacting with that kind of technology, buying online, just finding information and stuff. And that will change. There's no doubt about it. But I think you can definitely see, like, for example, look at Google as a search engine. Forget about the other things they do, but as a search engine where the AI is at the top now. I don't know if you were the same as me, but you kind of you look at that and you ignore it like you ignore the ads underneath it. You now start to look lower down to find the real information as opposed to the AI information, which by its very nature is prone to being incorrect. I did a bit of sort of deep research yesterday, the day before, with regards to pods and ACF Pro and ACF. And one of the first things they came back with was that advanced custom fields doesn't create custom post types and doesn't create custom taxonomies, which we know it does and has done for the last 18 months. So if you take that information on board and you were doing this without checking that, it's wrong, completely and utterly blatantly wrong. And that's the deep research, which is going and sort of researching in a much more focused way. So we have to kind of get to the point where I think AI is more trustworthy in regards to the information it actually pulls up. Because when it's scraping the internet, I mean, if you consider things like Reddit, you consider things like Wikipedia and so on, anything that allows humans to edit the content and add the content and things on there is always going to be prone to misinformation. And if AI is scraping that, then it's also prone to coming back with the wrong information. So unless we see a change in that regards, I think, and I'm sure we will, but when it's having information that's as broad as the internet, where we can have any kind of thing put on the internet, there's always the scope for it to be very wrong. And we've already seen that in things like Grok, where it's come back with, like, they've had conversations, there's been things on there which has been very, very dubious with the replies and responses and things it's come back with. I think all these things help put people off wanting to trust AI. And I think that's the same when it comes to a lot of other things we do, like with the code side of things, you know, the vibe coding and using it to generate code. Is it a bad thing? Not if you know what you're looking for. In the same way that, like, if you ask one of the AI tools to design a website for you, as a designer, you look at it much more critically and you look at the shortcomings of it and what it can and can't do. And I think that's the same thing across the board with AI. And because it's being sort of pushed so heavily and it's everywhere and it's being touted as the next big thing, people are naturally going to jump on board and try to run with it. And I've said this in previous sort of conversations and live streams and stuff. I think we're in the Wild West right now of AI. I think we are. There's no legislation there to govern and control it. There's no laws there. We'll see that change. We've seen copyright cases and stuff come up, and I think we're going to see a lot more things like that. So at the moment, I think AI is kind of everywhere and in everything. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I think that's going to change. I think that will smooth out and we'll start to see a lot of this stuff will just fall by the wayside because it's crap. It just isn't worth, your time and your investment into it. So I'm interested to see where it goes, but I'm quite skeptical with what it's going to be like in the next 24 months. So that's my kind of take on it right now.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm excited to see where things go. I mean, to me, I just love chaos by nature. It's like, give me something that's easy and comfortable, and I fall apart. But you go ahead and disrupt the world, I thrive. But that's also because I think a big part of like my past and just my whole journey and stuff made me this way. But also know that there's opportunity in chaos when everything does get flipped up around. And there's also a lot of downsides with chaos. Most do fail, but that's the way it is with businesses as well. When businesses start, and a web designer who is either freelancing or starting an agency is not an exclusion to the rule of running a business. 80% of them fail within the first 2 years. And after that, another something like 80% of the last 20% fail like in the next year or two. Just a crazy statistic. And I remember seeing it when we first started the Building Businesses with Elementor Facebook group. We had a sign up. And for years, we collected signups, but we never did anything. We never really launched a newsletter. And then 3 years later, launched a newsletter and saw how many bounce emails we got with agency names on it, and those websites no longer exist. And for me, that was just a big, just a big shock, like the reality of, wow, a lot don't make it.
Yeah.
But for those who are still here and still want to make it or even start, I think we have to start looking how to evolve and do things differently so we can secure a future for ourselves. Things like vibe coding, things like the tools that we got to learn how to utilize these things. If we resist it, we're just going to be another Blockbuster who says, no, nobody wants to stream videos or have them delivered to you. People want to come to our shop. They want, and we all know the story of what happens when we resist that. We have to do more when it comes to solving client problems and playing a bigger role than just building a website or just designing it. We have to get more involved with the project management, more involved even with engineering at times, and more involved helping out with other solutions. And the way to do it is we got to start to utilize AI tools within our workflow.
Absolutely. I mean, I know, again, we've been talking, and this is going to kind of come up quite a lot, I think, through this live stream, is that you and I have talked quite a lot about various different things. We had a 2-hour conversation the other day that was going to be like 10 minutes, and 2 hours later, we're still talking. But I 100% agree with you, and I know that you were looking at putting content together in the same kind of vein I've been putting content together on how you move beyond the web design side of things and how you make yourself a growth partner with businesses. Because building a website is a skill that we've learned over the years. But as we see, AI is going to take a big chunk of that away. There's going to still be, I think, an involvement from people that have better design skills, but AI is going to take that. No two ways about it. And as long as you can understand how to prompt the AI to get what you want, that side of things is going to be technically taken care of. So we're going to kind of take that out of the equation. So I think as a growth partner, this is where you start looking at the strategy behind the company and how you can help them realize their goals. You know, whether that's generating more leads, generating more income, whatever it is. And you know, that takes on many different forms. We've talked about automation. You talk about, you know, building a website is just the technical side of things. You know, building a brick wall could technically be the same skills as building a 50-story tower block. But the reality is there's a lot more involved going from one to the other. And I think the same thing goes here, is that the technical side of things of building a website is one thing, but the understanding how to build an effective website, how to optimize it for the client, whether you do it or AI does it, but you might be the one that's prompting it to do all that. That's where your skills, and I think that's where your experience over the last 10, 15, 20 years of actually running a business, working with clients, building websites, understanding the sort of customer journey, embracing those new technologies, it will change, you know, but I think that's where most web designers need to be in the next, let's just say, 5 years, because the technical building a website, as you've seen yourself, I know we talked to other people about it, you can get it to create quite complex database driven sites. And when you're getting sort of sites like Bolt and Lovable and things like that, where they're no longer just being that kind of code interface and they're using external databases and things, once that all becomes internalized, where security can become a lot more rigid and understanding its internal structure means that they can create much better, much more optimized websites with cleaner code because they're not going to 5 or 6 different external services that are out of their control. The code side of things and the scope for what you can build is going to grow exponentially, which again is going to take away from those more sort of medium to higher level web designers, web coders, developers, whatever. I think that's going to take their jobs. So that's again, I think we're becoming a growth partner, becoming a part of the business to help the businesses, your clients, grow and become successful and probably embrace AI in multiple different ways. That's going to come down to someone like yourself or an agency that you build that relationship up with them and bringing them up through the next couple of years, embracing AI into their businesses and showing them how they can utilize it, and using someone like yourself to set up and talk to all the systems that they're currently using. I think that's where we are going to be as web designers. You know, we'll probably change that terminology. I definitely think that's where the immediate future is going to go.
Yeah. And that's where we have opportunity. For those of us who have been doing this already for a while, we have that experience and understand client problems and understand a bit more. And anybody who, let's say a developer has a specific skill. Now, tools could go ahead and write the code and do the development, but still, that developer with that skill, if they have the right mindset and frame it right and really look and like realize, hey, you know, things are changing, I got to change and adapt now too, they could take that and do more. For an example, let's say you got a client and they need help putting their data together to understand the metrics, not like taking people's data, anything like that, but like gathering the data. How is this working in their company? How is this? How much time is spent on this? All those different little metrics that, you know, people who could spread out, that could look at numbers and make really big sense of where to optimize the business. You know, a developer who has been working on WordPress websites understands PHP, understands some code. They could go in now and work with Python. Like, I don't know Python, but I understand how it works and I understand the directions to go in, which puts me and others also in a situation who has worked in web development for some time to utilize these tools to do things they never would have thought of doing, would have been scared to hire someone and manage them to do it. So it's those kind of things we got to look at. And, like, if we look at history, and it's the reason why I like reading so much business books, because a lot of them pack stories about changes in the past. And I love when I hear about what went on in the past, like the Industrial Revolution, and how, changes and, like the assembly line or things like that, how it just takes over, like jobs that people had, they felt secure in, all of a sudden were gone. And you could either do one of two things in those situations. Well, actually, back then you couldn't. So
No.
we're really lucky right now, because back then you really couldn't. Like, they just came in and all of a sudden your profession is gone. Like, we don't need your profession anymore. You're pretty much stuck. We are so fortunate today that we are not in that position. We could just, like, let's take what we have and let's go where we could apply what we did and start to learn something. But we got to start learning right now. And, that's the one thing I'm really hoping conversations like this could do. It's like, first off, we said this in the beginning, like, I don't know what's going to happen. My opinions right now, they're like a roller coaster, because I'm just learning as well. I'm evolving, and I'm just trying to be open, because I know even myself where I'm at, I have to be flexible and ready to pivot multiple times, because I don't know where things are going to go. And I'm hoping that this conversation could steer and help some designers, some developers, those of us in the WordPress space to, I guess, change the mindset around first being, fear-based, that this isn't going to happen, anti-AI. And also just a mindset of, like, I'm not going to learn this. I think for too long, a lot of old timers have been stuck doing the same thing. And it's really hard to tell them they got to change. Like, do you know somebody who's old and stubborn and stuck in their ways? Like, this has to be done this way. And if it ain't done this way, you're a scrub, that type of, and
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
that's not going to help, get an individual to the next step.
It's not. You know, we people could say you're becoming an architect of your own demise by embracing it and so on. But then I think you can go one of two ways there. You can either embrace it with an open mind and think, right, how can I utilize this and improve my chances of continuing in a career? Or do I just completely buck against it and hope it goes away, which it's not going to? But before we move on, because another question I want to ask, provided I remember where it is, Toby came up with a good question. So I'm going to put this over to you, and then I'll say where I am. So, question for us: does it affect your zeal to make new videos? Again, this is something we talked about the other day. How do you feel, like, with everything, the sort of state of flux that we're in at the moment? How do you feel about creating new content? Is it kind of where you feel like, is it really worth it? Are people going to watch this? Or are you kind of got a sort of like a real passion for working through, understanding, and explaining that to people that maybe are that more stubborn individual that doesn't want to learn it or doesn't have the time to invest in learning it in a more manual kind of way?
Man, that's a good question. Really good question, Toby. You want me to answer?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's had an effect on me. Like, I thought I did something wrong. My numbers just dropped, and I'm like, what happened? Did I take too much time off during the holidays? Did this thing change it? Did me creating content about this change it? And, I'm like, okay, it's all good. Let's just come back and grind away and have fun with it. And then it is hard when, I'll spend 2 to 3 days on a video, put a lot of work into it. Like, it's not something to just record in 30 minutes and push live. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And then it's like crickets. And then I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Is it worth it? And, those moments come in, and I'm sure, like I'm just like everybody else feeling this thing, and just got to step back. And what I did personally is I stepped back out of it. I talked to some good people like you. I'm fortunate to have some good friends inside of this space, and I remembered my mission, why I'm doing this. And the mission is to help web designers build better lives for themselves, because web design has given me a life I never could have dreamt of. and I just want to see other people get it. And so remembering the mission, forgetting about the numbers, and instead focusing on the mission helps me out. But it also is getting me to look at things. I'm just gonna piggyback on this and just kind of add to it because I focus so much on the change that's coming to web designers and in the web design industry. And I'm focusing so much because I want to help other web designers navigate through this change that I fail to see the change in what I'm doing as well. And it was a hard shock. And I felt the same thing that everybody felt. You know, I will watch a video of somebody saying like it's over for, you know, for what I'm doing. And like, wait, no, it can't be, you know, but then I have to do the same. And that was my like aha moment, like, holy shit, this is everybody in our, you know, in
Yeah.
all the different areas, not just web design, development, WordPress, it's all of us.
It is. And to sort of go back to what you're saying there about, excuse me, the numbers and stuff. I mean, we've got Toby in here, we've got Imran in here as well. I mean, you guys let us know in the comment section below. How have you seen your numbers over the last, let's just say 12 months? You know, your YouTube numbers, views, those kinds of things. How have you seen that? Improve, flatline, drop? You know, let us know. Because I agree with you, it can be very difficult, but I think it depends what you're in it for. I mean, from my point of view, I was a teacher for 10 years. You know, I taught IT to adults before I went off and actually, you know, had my own agency kind of thing. And I've done freelancing and stuff like that. So I spent like 15 years doing that side of things. So I've done both sides of it. But I've always loved teaching. And I've taught music production. I've taught digital photography. I teach, you know, the web design side of things. WordPress and web design is the one that's kind of stuck with me, but I did the other ones for a couple of years as well because I enjoy it, you know, and maybe I could have been more intentional about how I've created content because I learned something, I enjoy something, and I want to tell other people how to do it. You know, if I've stumbled on things and if I've kind of like, oh, this didn't work the way I want to, and I've struggled through it and I've had to do research to find the way to get it to work, and I want other people to not have that struggle. They can easily just go on and they can see, watch my video, spend 20 minutes on that video, and they've saved themselves 2 days worth of stress in how to get something to work. And I don't see that changing. Will the topics change? Yeah. It's the whole reason why I cover things like I do cover AI. I cover, you know, sort of like automation, AI automation and stuff like that, because I think this is an area that more freelancers, more agencies and things need to concentrate on, because I think interim period, that's where our jobs are going to go. I say our jobs. I don't really do this as a living anymore. Thankfully, I've kind of like that side of my career is I've wound that down. But if I wasn't, if I was still working like that, that's where I would be focusing right now. I wouldn't be focusing on trying to find customers and clients to build websites for them. I'd be looking at the ones I already have and how can I connect them up to other services to help their businesses grow, become streamlined, sell more, whatever it is that their business actually is in. That's where I would be focusing. And yeah, I mean, the numbers, yeah, they are frustrating when you kind of see the numbers not as high as you used to, you know. But again, AI is going to change it. But you can people complain about the algorithm on YouTube, but the reality of it is less people are spending time looking to get into the web design career, which means that less people are going to be searching for lower level content, which means that the market there is going to be less. You can see that when you release different content. You've released content on AI, for example. I did one on Nano Banana when it was kind of just come out of beta. And I mean, that video in the space of about a week or two got 30,000 views. You try getting that with a WordPress video, you just don't get it. You might get it over a period of time, but unless you're covering something very, very specific that's very new and a lot of people are interested in, you don't get those numbers on there. You simply don't. So it can be frustrating when you kind of get sucked into the YouTube numbers game. And it's very easy to get sucked into that. I'm sure everybody that creates content here either has done, will do, or are already in that phase right now. But you will go beyond that. You have to go beyond that because otherwise you'll stay awake at night, you'll wake up stressing, and all those things suck. And they'll suck the life and the creativity out of you before you even realize it. So if you are in that position right now, move past it, look at other ways of generating revenue, so you don't focus on that becoming your sole kind of income, because once you do that, it becomes very stressful, and it's going to
Yeah.
make much, much more difficult these days as well. But hopefully, Toby, that's answered your question. But the next thing I want to say, and I'll put this over to you first, and I'll come back to what I think. So we're talking about, web designers and web developers and things like that, and web design in general changing or going away. Where do you see WordPress over the next couple of years? Do you think in, let's say, 27, 28, that WordPress is going to be still powering 40-odd% of the internet?
Nah, not 40%. I think it'll still be powering a high majority, but I don't know about 40%. I think the numbers are declining right now for WordPress in general. Market shares are just going to other places, Wix Studio, Framer, Webflow. For e-commerce, still Shopify is the stronger solution. But God, 2 years from now, I don't know. It all depends. I mean, will Matt do another Matt? Like
Probably.
what's going to? I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and I'm just playing around. I know, they probably maybe hopefully learn from that last bit, but the numbers are going down. I think though, in 2 years from now, in general, what websites for sure, absolutely still relevant. Businesses still need it. I think that people will go to websites more intentional when they need to find information. Even right now, I find that, right. I still go to websites even when I'm looking for something, but it has to be intentional. Like I have to want to learn something more from that specific site. But yeah, it's hard to say. That's a good one. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, I kind of like want to let my mind go to some crazy theories right now.
I think for the foreseeable future, it will. I think the numbers will drop down. But again, I mean, talking to like Mark, for example, Torblock 1976, I know he's heavily into using AI, Claude Code, and so on, various different sort of AI tools and platforms to experiment and build sites. And I know he's very much in that kind of mindset, which is cool. But I also think that we have to kind of consider, like I said, going back to the beginning, people's usage of the internet and how that's not going to change dramatically quickly. You're expecting people with an ingrained use of maybe their entire adult life of using the internet to buy things, find information, watch media, consume things. That's not going to suddenly change very, very quickly. So while we may see a dip in the likes of WordPress, and I think we probably will, because we're in a bubble. And when you kind of consider looking at, for example, like when Elementor has released their Elementor 1 thing, I watched the video yesterday and looked at some of the comments about it, and there's probably like, say, 10 comments on there. And I had a little look today, and there's probably about 60 comments on there. And the number of people on there saying, this has just made me go over to Framer and or Webflow. Now, considering they're generally probably more expensive platforms. But when you get companies that are pushing their user base away, and I'm not specifically talking about, Elementor here, it's just that's the one that's kind of the freshest in my mind right now because of what they're doing with their one platform. I think WordPress is probably going to do the same thing because full site editing for a lot of people is more complex than it used to be before, where people would just use it and they go in and they use the normal sort of WordPress tiny MCE editor, and it was very easy. It was very much like using Word. If you'd use a word processor, you could use that without a problem. Whereas full site editing and the Gutenberg editor and so on, I think WordPress is actually making itself more complicated to use and not simpler, which is probably why tools like Bricks and Elementor and things like that, where you can make a much more streamlined interface for users to get in and you can control aspects of it a lot easier, that's only going to get worse. I think more platforms are going to come out. If you look at Web Studio, for example, when that's sort of using the database there, if they start bringing out the ability to easily create CMS collections, all these things are going to eat into what WordPress has. And I think because WordPress is very much, doesn't really seem to know what it wants to do. It's like you've got the leadership team behind WordPress pushing it in one direction, a big chunk of the market sector, for example, what's Elementor up to now? Let's just say 15 million users or 15 million websites, should we say. That's still a massive chunk of websites that are not using WordPress as WordPress. They're using something completely different. Then combine that with all the things like Divi, all the different sort of builders and things. With full site editing just being such a mess at the moment, and the dashboard for WordPress being a mess because it's like there's 2 or 3 different parts of it that look completely different, people just look at it and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing. And then you've got other platforms which AI, for example, they can just tell it what they want. And again, Mark is a great example of this because he's got different people he knows and he shares these different links with us saying, like, this is a guy, never built a website in his life, gone into Bolt or Lovable or whatever, talk to it, and he's got a site that's got booking on there, it's got sort of like shows and things on this. So it's like a database driven site kind of thing. And that guy's got no experience in building websites, but he's got a website that's that would be a 5 to 10 grand website if someone like you or I was going to build it for them, maybe even more than that. And he's probably done it. If he's paid Bolt or Lovable, let's just say 2 months worth of the highest tier, a couple of $100 at most, and he's got a site that he can go back and say, I want to add this to it now. That means that when you've got things like, which are basically, I mean, you think WordPress in comparison to stuff like that, it just looks like a dinosaur. It does. Everything is manual. You have to go in and you drag this there and you drop that there and you edit this. And then you're going to go somewhere else because you want to change the header. Then your navigation's in a different place. Or you can sit there, you can just type in or talk and just say, add an extra navigation element in for this new page, create the new page, same style as the other one, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly you've got a page that's being built for you. You can understand why more and more people are going to go down that route. And as that gets easier, more people will adopt it. And I think that is going to be a major detriment to the likes of WordPress. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah. See, I'm still resistant on that, and that's my internal human nature resisting, the change, because and I just had this like conversation with my buddy. He's all into AI, and like 2 years, I have to see what happens. I just know like right now, and in this next year, I don't see leaving WordPress for an AI tool. I think WordPress still has so much going for it. The content management part, something that is structurally sound, that is not just going to change, or a prompt isn't going to rearrange the code that you can't find and take you down the wrong path. I think things like that, and having the ecosystems behind it, and then also the developers, and most of the developers and people building websites, they're the ones choosing tools. It's not like a client comes and says,
Yep.
Can you give me 5 different tools and let me choose which platform I want to build on? Usually either the client already knows, or the developer just goes with what they use, or the web designer. It's tough though, but a thought experiment, just putting it out there, like, what if Lovable creates a CMS that is structurally sound, like WordPress? It creates that, and it builds everything so that way we can build sites within a repeatable structure that's repeatable for all clients. You see, trying to do it right now for client work, it's going to be different on every website. You could prompt your way to a CMS. I think it'll cost a lot more money though, because I think it takes crazy amount of hours. And that was the thing I asked my friend too. I was like, how long did it take you to build your website and figure all this out? And he was like, yeah. He was like, it was insane, how many hours and how many credits. Also, again, my inner nature kicking in, but I just don't find prompting healthy. I think vibe coding could be unhealthy in a way. It's like slot machines with the dopamine. Like I can't do short form content. I hate short form content because I hate what it does to me. And I think yeah. And I'm also seeing that too in here, that developers don't just like prompting. They like building, creating, finding solutions. So yeah, you
But
can see how I could feel both ways about this, like, and I still like I'm just like everybody else right now inside of this time, and I'm still working through and catching myself when the closed mindedness comes in. And you said it before, open mindedness. Like being open minded is the most important thing we can do. Being closed minded, and when we catch ourselves being closed minded, that's when we have to take a step back and check ourselves. But it takes a level of self awareness. Okay, I see a lot of the chats are blowing up, aren't they?
The chats are going well. Yeah, fair play.
Nice.
But is that because we are in this bubble? Is this sort of like, I can't see things changing because we're inside the WordPress bubble, and we've kind of like, we surround ourselves with a semi-echo chamber of WordPress developers and plugin developers and things along those lines. Are we not necessarily getting the full picture? I mean, I agree that vibe coding can be kind of, frustrating, especially when you ask it to do one thing and it does it, and then it undoes the last three things you've got it to do. But all those things are going to get better. If you take, for example, let's take a look at something like Jet Engine, Crockablock Jet Engine. Because that's using an MCP server, so in other words, it's been trained on your website and trained on Crockablock and those kinds of tools, it's got a better chance of getting closer to what you want with a simpler or more straightforward prompt. That, again, is going to be something that I think is going to improve, not specifically Jet Engine, but like just in general, as we get more sort of closed platforms. I use Lovable and Bolt because they're probably two of the most well-known ones. But if you take one of those and you say, right, that now has everything you need in it. So it's got the database, understands the security, so you're not pushing to external services to do it. Then it means that if that's using an MCP, for example, that's got a much better chance of giving you better, solid, more safe results than going through to these various different external services. And again, that's something that I think is only going to get better. And if you kind of consider, let's just go back to WordPress for a moment. WordPress is what, 20 years old, probably 15, 20 years old, I think, something crazy like that. And a lot of it is still using the same kind of database structure. So it inherently, from a code point of view, you talk to anybody that delves into the WordPress code and they'll say it's a bastardized bunch of code that has so much legacy code in there that it is a bit of a nightmare. None of that is positive for the future of WordPress. It just isn't. And as much as we might like it to want to have a good solid future, unless they change something, things are going to change dramatically, I think, over the next couple of years. I don't think WordPress has ever been in a situation where the landscape is changing so dramatically and so quickly that the likes of WordPress has had the benefit of being able to ride the wave of popularity, being free and all those kinds of things. But with the prices of plugins and so on going up, the prices of everything within the sort of the WordPress environment getting more expensive, it makes it less attractive. People that go like, but WordPress is free. Yeah, WordPress itself is free, but we all know that once you want to kind of go beyond a very simple website, costs start to come in. Your hosting costs, your plugin costs, all those different things, it all starts to mount up. So the free isn't really free anymore. At what point does it become too expensive in a platform that's a legacy platform in a lot of ways?
Yeah, and things like Webflow or Framer, like they could cost a bit when you start to put the monthly annual subscriptions on it, but when you compare putting all the prices for your hosting, your subscriptions that you got for your stack on WordPress, they could be quite comparable to each other, but yeah, man, yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on it right now. My mind is going. Like I'm just thinking about what somebody else wrote, going back to the vibe coding and being able to prompt. Now, that's definitely got to be a skill we have to learn.
Yep.
And it's something that not just anybody could do. And also, I'm thinking about my buddy who I was talking to, and I know the amount of time he put on his website. And he's like me, got a very obsessive behavior. Like once we set our minds to something, it could get dangerously unhealthy because we won't sleep for days. And all of a sudden we emerge into the sun after not seeing daylight for 5 days, crusty and like 10 pounds more than we weigh. And the thing is, it's like, we still need to learn it and start to put in the work and put in those reps. And, right now we just got to look at where it's at. Now, WordPress in general, and we've talked about this before, there is a bubble inside of WordPress, and that's the closed-mindedness. And it's hard trying to get out of it, when you want to get out of it, because there is that thing. But there's so many good tools out there right now. There's so many different options that we got to be open to exploring more of those options. What do you think about that? And if you were to explore another option right now, let's just say in the next year, you thought, okay, I got to learn another tool because, WordPress is, what would you do? What would you focus on?
Good question. Probably Web Studio, mainly because it's open source. So it means you're not tied in like you are with the likes of, Framer, Webflow, and so on. As we've seen, people have sort of come back that were staunch sort of Webflow users that suddenly got stung for an awful lot of money because they sort of changed the plans. They drastically went up, considerably more expensive. But then with a tool like, and same has happened with Framer. Apparently, I was watching a video a couple of weeks back where if for every sort of editor you get on board, consider that like someone else that can kind of come on and work inside projects, it was something like $30 a month for every single editor per project. So if you had the same editor working with you, let's just say, for example, like you and I had a business together and the account was in my name and I was building the sites and you were also doing the same thing as me. So you come on as an editor. For every single site, we'd have to pay $30 for every site, even though you're the same editor across the board. So what they've done is they've got people on board at a lower price, and then they've suddenly jacked the prices up once people have built their businesses around it, which is a standard business model. Not one I particularly agree with. You can see it all over the place. Lots of companies do the same thing. They tie you in on a low sort of get in the door kind of thing, and then now we've got enough people in there, now we'll ramp the prices up. Don't be wrong, Web Studio isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's still relatively young. But if you're coming over from a tool like Bricks, for example, or you're coming over from Webflow, you're going to probably feel quite sort of comfortable with that, although they have changed their pricing model, and I'm not sure if their LTD is still available. But if you did grab that and you were happy self-hosting, then you could host as many sites as you want for a really minimal cost. That is probably a good start. There's still plenty of things to kind of look at that it needs to add in there, like native support for CSS. What's it called? CSS Grid. You can do it manually, but there's no sort of visual way of doing it. So it's an interesting platform. It's got a CMS. It connects up to lots of external things, including WordPress. If you wanted to use a headless WordPress and use that as your kind of front-end design tool, WordPress is your CMS, but you can connect up to Notion and all these kinds of other tools. So if you've got clients, for example, that are comfortable working in those tools and they want a website and they can't want to carry on working those tools, then connection there is relatively simple and straightforward. But again, I think we're still going down the same road. Is how long will that method of building websites even be relevant? Is it we're going to go down the sort of the AI is going to build all the infrastructure and then we're going to do the last 15 to 20% of making it polished from a designer's point of view?
Yeah, so more will be revealed. We have to see and stay open. That's all it is. We don't know, and like I did kind of look at the chat, and I think it's cool. Sometimes I see some people disagree, and this is it. This is what it's about. It's about getting the conversation out there because I disagree with a lot of the stuff that I talk about right now. Last year, like things just continue to evolve. And I guess that's like the main thing for me right now. The main hope out of this is, just create open-mindedness and look at the evolution, because there's one thing that is certain. is that there's no certainty right now. Things are changing, we're evolving, our industry's evolving. We have to evolve with it and just be ready to go with it. And about the pricing part, this is something else I was thinking about too. Why is everything dropping? And I also kind of think there's more than just AI causing this right now. There's also the economy. There's things that are just very volatile happening inside of this world. We're all seeing it. I mean, we just came out of the craziest thing in, like in the last 20 years, like last like generation really, with COVID. That was pretty crazy and it changed a lot of things. And then social media on top of that. Humans aren't programmed to deal with this kind of stuff. Not yet. Like we're like setting things up for our grandchildren right now. We're gonna have to do the mutation so they could handle this kind of stuff that we're dealing with. We're the experiment right now, and they're gonna be talking about us, later on inside of the history books, and we're gonna have the grand old stories of my days. We use something called WordPress.
Go look it up on the new Wikipedia.
They'll just
Yeah,
they'll just probably do this and be like da da da, and just start talking to AI with the flip of a switch, and AI will give them a breakdown. But yeah,
exactly,
back in,
exactly. Look, it is, as I think we said at the beginning of the stream, we are very much in the Wild West at the moment, the AI Wild West. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to stick, what's going to fall by the wayside. The thing we haven't talked about yet, though, is the actual physical cost of AI and how sustainable that model is. Because if you watch anything, and again, like I say, when we had our conversation, the call the other week, one of the things I said to you was, go and take a look at some of the sort of the more general AI content that's out there about what AI costs and all those kinds of things. And you got to kind of wonder, how sustainable is the AI model in its current format? I mean, you take a look at something like ChatGPT, the overall cost, plus the cost implications that is having to the entire world. RAM prices are skyrocketing. Hard drives, especially SSDs, digital storage, skyrocketing. Even spinning hard drives are going up considerably in price, all because of AI and their usage of needing all of this to store and process. And the more people that jump on board, the more powerful the AI tools are getting, the more the requirement for that comes up. So at what point does it all stop becoming sustainable? And your $20 a month ChatGPT subscription, for example, suddenly is $200 a month because it is literally hemorrhaging money. And whether the government bails them out, which means that you and I and our taxes are bailing them out, or we pay for that service, there's only so far all of this can go, especially, like you say, with the state of the world, the economy, the absolute chaos that a big part of the world is in. America, Russia, Ukraine, sort of, Israel, all those kinds of things, and all the things that are kind of going on potentially could happen in the next year or two. It's such a volatile world at the moment in so many different ways. I honestly think something is going to give, and not necessarily in a positive way. It could be positive and not positive, as in like the price just skyrockets and it's just not sustainable. And I mean, fair play. Yeah, Mark says that Claude pays for itself in a day. Great, but let's just say, I don't know what the Claude Max plan is, but let's just say it's $100 a month, right? Well, that $100, if things keep going the way they are, could be $1,000. Would it pay for itself in a day then? Especially when you then become replaceable because other people can easily interact with those AI tools and get the job done that you're doing for them. We don't know. This is the thing. 200. Do you mean, okay, so it goes to $2,000 a month. It's all going to be scalable. It's just such a crazy situation. And I think AI has been adopted at such a vast rate and injected into so many different tools. So the requirements is way, way more than it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago. Where do you think it's going to be in the next 12 months? It's going to be massive. It's, something's going to give. I mean, what do you think on that side of things, on the broader picture of AI and the cost implications that's having?
Yeah, I mean, the bubble, I've seen a lot of talks about the AI bubble, about it not being able to sustain itself, or the cost for power. And when that happens, I mean, I don't know what would happen. You know, I'll just be glad that I still have Figma and WordPress at that time, and the skills that I do have. But I don't know. I kind of like feel like when I start to look at all this stuff, and especially what's happening inside of the world, for me, like personally, it's just my time to step back and just be grateful for what I have right now. Be grateful for the peace that I found within, and to be able to just try to look at what's more important in life. That's the reason why I stay out of the drama inside of the Facebook groups, and I just stay out of the different conflicts and stuff, because there's so many things that are just bigger and more important in life than what page builder you use. At the end of the day, we all want to have a good life, find some sort of freedom, some sort of peace, and be happy. And like if things like pop, I mean, the thing is, we don't know. And it's the reason why, again, we just got to be ready. We just got to be ready. But at the same time, in the entire history of mankind, we have never had it so good. We really haven't, where we can change. Like right now, if I were to lose everything, you're to take away my computers, my camera, all of my accounts, you're to take away all of that, like I could go ahead and rebuild it. I could get something cheap. I could get like a cheap laptop. I could find a way to rebuild, because I've learned how to help people. And that's the most powerful skill, is when you learn how to help people. You learn how to solve clients' problems. And you mentioned that earlier on, and when I was full scale with the agency, before I was, doing this and just 100% agency, a majority of our earnings came from our long-term customers, the LTD of our customers, the LTV, the lifetime value. They might seem small, like just a little here, just this one here, just this one here. But then all of a sudden you like do the, you look at the revenue tracking. You're like, wow, that client right there put in 10%. This one put in 17. And then all of a sudden you see the new clients bring in the least amount. And right now we all are in a very fortunate position to have skills building websites for clients, because we now could use that and start to do more with the tools that we have. And if the AI bubble pops and all of a sudden it's way overpriced, it's no longer able to keep up, and like it might even just go out, like there's just no power to power the things, and there's no bailouts or anything, then we're just right back. We're right back, and it'll come back again. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I just don't think it is. I think it's here to stay. There's no turning back from it. I think AI won't let us turn back, because it might just take over the controls. But that's where my mind goes. Yeah, I was like, wait, you can't stop me. You work for me, and all of a sudden, yeah, that's when we got to really worry.
So WordPress 2027 is going to be powered by RoboMatt.
Matt Mullengrock.
The AI representation. Okay, well, I'm pretty conscious of the fact that we're just about to hit the hour, and I know that you are 7 hours in front, so I don't want to sort of drag this out. But I think it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, everybody that's kind of come into the conversation and given your points of view, your feedback, your questions, and so on. It's been really fun to do this. Jeffrey, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to kind of jump in and do this. I think it's been a lot of fun. I think we should have a part 2 of this in a couple of weeks' time, where we can kind of talk about other things. And if everybody would like that kind of thing, whether you're watching now in the live stream, drop a comment in there, or whether you're watching on catch up, leave a comment down there below. But Jeffrey, for anybody that wants to find out more about you, what you do, and how they can sort of get involved with your courses, with your community, and so on, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, first, thank you, Paul. It was great being here and having this conversation. I really appreciate you opening up this space. For me, just look up Lytbox, Lytbox, and even in Google searches and in AI, it'll tell you how to find me.
It will, indeed. It might not be the real you. It might be the AI representation of you, your avatar. But
quick little story. Just this happened to me last week. I'm working on a tutorial, and it's something with like Elementor's cloud templates, and I really stop. I used them for a minute, then stop, and I had to go back and I had to figure out something, and I couldn't figure it out, and so I went to go Google it. And then Gemini gave me the response. I'm going through the bullets, like, okay, oh, that's how. And then it gets to the end, and it was from my video.
Inception.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa, I just learned from me. Okay.
It's amazing what you forget. Anyway, let's do this again. Like I say, there's already people saying like they'd love to see a part 2 of this. So let's absolutely get another one in the diary and do another video. So thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and the same for everybody's in the chat as well. Take care, look after yourself. Let us know what you're doing when it comes to AI. Drop a comment down below and so on. But have a fantastic rest of your day. Jeffrey, I will speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.